live. Yeah.
Now, do I just deploy these sheep into this ranch?
What is that? Huh. Okay. Should be live. How do I... What? No. All chat messages are visible.
Oh, wait, this is a new chat feature that you have there.
Yeah, I updated it. What do you
That's
think? Do you
actually
like
nice.
it?
Yeah, that's nice.
I just got to move it across. Give me a sec. For some reason, my Streamlabs is set YouTube to be the primary chat, and I can't see the Twitch chat right now.
I'll say it's wigging me out because I hear you, like here, and then I hear you on the
Yeah.
stream, and the delay's like 5 seconds or
Yeah,
so.
that's as short as you can get it, unfortunately. Hey, give me a second. Usually there's like a what if I got a multi-stream? That didn't work last night, but probably should post that I'm live in Discord. Don't forget that again, guys. I'm live. Okay, because I have the YouTube stream up on my other monitor.
You're not gonna buy another one for your YouTube?
Another monitor.
Yeah.
I have 3 monitors already, so
Why not 4?
Yeah.
I could actually fit 4 now.
Oh, jeepers.
How do I swap my... Wait, how to swap chat output?
So how do I put these lamb thingamabobs in the ranch?
You just you have to assign them in the monitoring stand.
Oh. I don't think you've got to build the monitoring stand, right?
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, okay. Stone.
Okay, I can see people. Just letting people know, I can see people. Wait, I can just do this. Wait, it's annoying that it's done that, but I might just quickly have to open up my Twitch, create a dashboard on my Firefox. That way, I can see your guys' chats because for some reason it's not letting me see them. Okay, we are here. I see Ruby. I see Adara. I see Rowan.
We are here.
We're here, just in time. Okay. Oh, Sosha. Hi, Sosha. How are you? You're new here again? Okay, guys, I'm gonna leave the call. You guys see you later. I'll see you guys. I'll see you guys later. Bye. Okay, guys, locked in. I don't know what was going on there. Bye, Ruby. Have a lovely day. Good morning, Odyssey. How are you guys going? How are we going this fine evening? Good morning. Good morning to everybody who is in the morning right now. Whoa. That's different. Okay. Okay, are we ready? Who's excited? Okay, I'm going to start reading now. It has just ticked over to 9. So I'm going to start, again, as usual. I'll chat to you guys once I finish. Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, Chapter 7, The Boggart in the Wardrobe. Malfoy didn't reappear in classes until late on Thursday morning, when the Slytherins and Gryffindors were halfway through their double potions. He swaggered in the dungeon, his right arm covered in bandages and bound up in a sling, acting, in Harry's opinion, as though he was the heroic survivor of some dreadful battle. "How is it, Draco?" simmered Pansy Parkinson. "Does it hurt much?" "Yeah," said Malfoy, putting on a brave sort of grimace, but Harry saw him wink at Crabbe and Goyle when Pansy had looked away. Settle down," said Professor Snape idly. Harry and Ron scowled at each other. Snape wouldn't have said settle down if they walked in late. He had given them detention. But Malfoy had always been able to get away with anything in Snape's classes. Snape was head of Slytherin House, and generally favoured his own students before all others. They were making a new potion today, a shrinking solution. Malfoy set up his cauldron right next to Harry and Ron, so that they were preparing their ingredients on the same table. "Sir," Malfoy called, "Sir, I'll need help cutting up these daisy roots because of my arm." "Weasley, cut up Malfoy's roots for him," said Snape without looking up. Ron went brick red. "There's nothing wrong with your arm," he hissed at Malfoy. Malfoy smirked across the table. "Weasley, you heard Professor Snape. Cut up these roots." Ron seized his knife, pulled Malfoy's roots towards him, and began to chop them roughly so they were all different sizes. "Professor," drawled Malfoy, "Weasley's mutilating my roots." Snape approached their table, stared down his hooked nose at the roots, then gave Ron an unpleasant smile from beneath his long, greasy black hair. "Change roots with Malfoy, Weasley." "But, sir..." Ron had spent the last quarter of an hour carefully shredding down his own roots to exactly equal pieces. "Now," said Snape in his most dangerous voice. Ron moved his own beautifully cut roots across the table at Malfoy, then took up the knife again. "And, sir, I'll need this shriveling skinned," said Malfoy, his voice full of malicious laughter. "Potter, you could skin Malfoy's shrivel fig," said Snape, giving Harry the look of loathing he always reserved just for him. Harry took Malfoy's shrivel fig as Ron set about trying to repair the damage to the roots he had to use. Harry skinned the shrivel fig as fast as he could and flung it back across the table at Malfoy without speaking. Malfoy was smirking more broadly than ever. "Seen your pal Hagrid lately?" he asked them quietly. "None of your business," said Ron jerkily without looking up. "I'm afraid he won't be a teacher much longer," said Malfoy in a tone of mock sorrow. "Father's not very happy about my injury." "Keep talking, Malfoy, and you'll have a real injury," snarled Ron. "He's complained to the school governors and to the Ministry of Magic. Father's got a lot of influence, you know. And a lasting injury like this," he gave a huge fake sigh. "Who knows if my arm will ever be the same?" "So that's why you're putting it on," said Harry, accidentally beheading a dead caterpillar because his wand hand was shaking in anger. "To try and get Hagrid sacked." "Well," said Malfoy, lowering his voice to a whisper, "partly, Potter. But there are other benefits too. Weasley, slice my caterpillars for me." A few cauldrons away, Neville was in trouble. Neville regularly went to pieces in potions lessons. It was his short subject, and in his great fear, Professor Snape made things 10 times worse. His potion, which was supposed to be a bright acid green, had turned orange. "Longbottom," said Snape, ladling some up and allowing it to splash back into the cauldron so that everyone could see. "Orange. Tell me, boy, does anything penetrate that thick skull of yours? Did you hear me say quite clearly that only one rat spleen was needed? Didn't I state plainly that a dash of leech juice would suffice? What do I have to do to make you understand, Longbottom?" Neville was pink and trembling. He looked as though he was on the verge of tears. "Please, sir," said Hermione. "Please, I could help Neville put it right." I don't remember asking you to show off, Miss Granger, said Snape coldly, and Hermione went pink as Neville. Longbottom, at the end of this lesson, we will need a few drops of this potion to your toad and see what happens. Perhaps that will encourage you to do it properly. Snape moved away, leaving Longbottom breathless with fear. Help me, he moaned to Hermione. Hey, Harry, said Seamus Finnegan, leaning over to borrow Harry's brass scales. Have you heard? Daily Prophet this morning, they reckon Sirius Black has been sighted. Where? Said Harry, and Ron quickly. On the other side of the table, Malfoy looked up, listening closely. Not too far from here, said Seamus, who looked excited. It was a muggle who saw him, of course. Of course, she didn't really understand. The muggles think he's an extraordinary criminal, don't they? So, she phoned the telephone hotline. By the time the Ministry of Magic got there, he was gone. Not too far from here, Ron repeated, looking significantly at Harry. He turned around and saw Malfoy watching closely. What, Malfoy? Need something else skinned? But Malfoy's eyes were shining malevolently, and they were fixed on Harry. He leant across the table. Thinking of trying to catch Black single-handedly, Potter. That's right, said Harry offhandedly. Malfoy's thin mouth was curving into a mean smile. Of course, if it was me, he said quietly, I'd have done something before now. I wouldn't be staying in school like a good boy. I'd be out there looking for him. What are you talking about, Malfoy? Said Ron roughly. Don't you know, Potter? Breathed Malfoy, his pale eyes narrowed. Know what? Malfoy let out a low, sneering laugh. Maybe you'd rather not risk your neck, he said. Want to leave it to the Dementors, do you? But if it was me, I'd want revenge. I'd hunt him down myself. What are you talking about? Said Harry angrily. But at that moment, Snape called. You should have finished adding your ingredients by now. This potion needs to stew before it can be drunk. Clear away while it simmers, and then we'll test Longbottom's. Crabbe and Goyle laughed openly, watching Longbottom's Neville sweat as he stirred his potion feverishly. Hermione was muttering instructions to him out of the corner of her mouth so that Snape couldn't see. Harry and Ron packed away their unused ingredients and went to wash their hands and ladles in the stone basin in the corner. What did that mean, Malfoy? Harry muttered. What did Malfoy mean? Harry muttered to Ron as he stuck his hand under the icy jet that poured from a gargoyle mouth. Why would I want revenge on Black? He hasn't done anything to me yet. He's making it up, said Ron savagely. He's trying to make you do something stupid. The end of the lesson in sight, Snape strode over to Neville, who was cowering by his cauldron. Everyone gather round, said Snape, his black eyes glittering, and watch what happens to Longbottom's toad. If he managed to produce a shrinking potion, it will shrink to a tadpole. If, as I don't doubt, he has done something wrong, his toad will likely be poisoned. The Gryffindors watched fearfully. The Slytherins looked excited. Snape picked up Trevor the toad in his left hand and dipped a small spoon in Neville's potion, which was now green. He trickled a few drops on the Trevor the toad. There was a moment of hushed silence in which Trevor gulped, then there was a small pop, and Trevor the tadpole was wriggling in Snape's palm. The Gryffindors burst into applause. Snape, looking sour, pulled a small bottle from his pocket of his robe, poured a few drops on Trevor, and he reappeared suddenly, fully grown. 5 points from Gryffindor, said Snape, which wiped the smiles from every face. I told you not to help him, Miss Granger. Class dismissed. Harry, Ron, and Hermione climbed the steps to the entrance hall. Harry was still thinking about what Malfoy had said, while Ron was seething about Snape. 5 points from Gryffindor because the potion was all right. Why didn't you lie, Hermione? You should have said Neville did it all by himself. Hermione didn't answer. Ron looked around. Where is she? Harry turned too. They were at the top of the steps now, watching the rest of the class pass them, heading for the Great Hall and lunch. She was right behind us, said Ron, frowning. Malfoy passed them, walking between Crabbe and Goyle. He smirked at Harry and then disappeared. There she is, said Harry. Hermione was panting slightly, hurrying up the stairs. One hand was clutching a bag. The other seemed to be tucking something down the front of her robes. How did you do that? Said Ron. What? Said Hermione, joining them. 1 minute you were right behind us, and next you were at the bottom of the stairs again. What? Hermione said, looking slightly confused. Oh, I had to go back for something. Oh no. A seam had split on Hermione's bag. Harry wasn't surprised. He could see that it was crammed with at least a dozen large and heavy books. Why are you carrying all that all around with you? Ron asked her. You know how many subjects I'm taking? Said Hermione breathlessly. Couldn't hold these for me, could you? But Ron was turning over the book she had handed him, looking at the covers. You haven't got any of these subjects today. It's only Defense Against the Dark Arts this afternoon. Oh, yes, said Hermione vaguely, but she packed all the books into her bag just the same. I hope there's something good for lunch. I'm starving, she added, and she marched off towards the Great Hall. Do you get the feeling that Hermione's not telling us something? Ron asked Harry. Professor Lupin wasn't there when they arrived at the first Defense Against the Dark Arts lesson. They all sat down, took out their books, quills, and parchment, and were talking when he finally entered the room. Lupin smiled vaguely and placed his tatty old briefcase on the teacher's desk. He was as shabby as ever, but looked healthier than he had on the train, as though he had had a few square meals. Good afternoon, he said. Would you please all put your books back in your bags? Today will be a practical lesson. You will only need your wands. A few curious looks were exchanged as the class put away their books. They had never had a Defense Against the Dark Arts practical class before, unless you counted the memorial class last year when their teacher had told them brought a cage full of pixies to class and set them loose. Right then, said Professor Lupin when everyone was ready. If you'd follow me. Puzzled, but interested, the class got to its feet and followed Professor Lupin out of the classroom. He led them along the deserted corridor and around a corner, where the first thing they saw was Peeves the poltergeist, who was floating upside down in midair and stuffing the nearest keyhole without chewing gum. Peeves didn't look up until Professor Lupin was 2 feet away. Then he wiggled his curly-toed feet and broke into song. Loony loopy Lupin, Peeves sang. Loony loopy Lupin, loony loopy Lupin. Rude and unmanageable as he almost always was, Peeves usually showed some respect towards the teachers. Everyone looked quickly at Professor Lupin to see how he would take this. To their surprise, he was smiling. I'd take that gum out of the keyhole if I were you, Peeves, he said silently.
Princess.
Mr. Filch won't be able to get into his brooms. Filch was the Hogwarts caretaker, a bad-tempered, failed wizard who waged a constant war against the students and, indeed, Peeves. However, Peeves paid no attention to Lupin's words, except to blow a loud, wet raspberry. Professor Lupin gave a small sigh and took out his wand. This is a useful little spell, he told the class over his shoulder. Please watch closely. He raised his wand to the shoulder and said, Waddy wassy, and pointed at Peeves. With the force of a bullet, the wad of chewing gum shot out of the keyhole and straight down Peeves' left nostril. He whirled right up and zoomed away, cursing. Cool, sir, said Dean Thomas in amazement. Thank you, Dean, said Professor Lupin, putting his wand away. Shall we proceed? They set off again, the class looking at shabby Professor Lupin with increased respect. He led them down a second corridor and stopped right outside the staff room door. Inside, please, said Professor Lupin, opening and standing back. The staff room, a long panelled room full of old, mismatched chairs, was empty except for one teacher. Professor Snape was sitting in a low armchair, and he looked around as the class filed in. His eyes were glittering, and there was a nasty sneer playing around his mouth. As Lupin came in and made to close the door behind him, Snape said, Leave it open, Lupin. I'd rather not witness this. He got to his feet and strode past the class, his black robes billowing behind him. At the doorway, he turned on his heel and said, Possibly no one's warned you, Lupin, but this class contains Neville Longbottom. I would advise you to not entrust him with anything difficult, not unless Miss Granger is hissing instructions in his ear. Neville went scarlet. Harry glared at Snape. It was bad enough that he bullied Neville in his own classes, let alone doing it in front of other teachers. Professor Lupin had raised his eyebrows. I was hoping that Neville would assist me with the first stage of the operation, he said, and I am sure he will perform it admirably. Neville's face went, if possible, even redder. Snape's lips curled, but he left, shutting the door with a snap. Now then, said Professor Lupin, beckoning the class forward towards the end of the room, where there was nothing except an old wardrobe in which the teachers kept their spare robes. As Lupin went to stand next to it, the wardrobe gave a sudden wobble, banging off the wall. "Nothing to worry about," said Lupin calmly, as a few people jumped back in alarm. "There's a boggart in there." Most people seemed to feel that this was something to worry about. Neville gave Professor Lupin a look of pure terror, and Seamus Finnegan eyed the now rattling doorknob apprehensively. "Boggarts, like dark enclosed spaces," said Professor Lupin. "Wardrobes, the gaps beneath beds, the cupboards under the sinks. I once met one that had lodged itself in a grandfather clock. This one moved in yesterday afternoon, and I asked the headmaster if the staff would leave it to give my third year's summit practice. So, the first question we must ask ourselves is, what is a boggart?" Harry put up her hand. "It's a shapeshifter," she said. "It can take the shape of what everyone thinks will frighten us most." "Couldn't have put it better myself," said Professor Lupin, and Hermione glowed. "So, the boggart sitting in the darkness within has not yet assumed a form. He does not know what will frighten the person on the other side of this door. Nobody knows what a boggart looks like when he's alone. But when I let him out, he will immediately become whatever each of us fears most. This means," said Professor Lupin, choosing to ignore Neville's small sputter of terror, "that we will have a huge advantage over that boggart before we begin. Have you spotted it, Harry?" Trying to answer a question with Hermione next to him, bobbing up and down on the balls of her feet with her hand in the air, was very off-putting, but Harry had to go. Because there are so many of us, it won't know what shape it should be?" "Precisely," said Lupin, and Hermione put her hand down, looking a little disappointed. "It's always best to have company when dealing with a boggart. He becomes confused. Which should he become? A headless corpse or a flesh-eating slug? I once saw a boggart make the very mistake, tried to frighten two people at once, and turn himself into a half-slug. Not remotely frightening. The charm that repels a boggart is simple, yet it requires force of mind. You see, the thing that really finishes the boggart is laughter. What you need to do is force it to assume a shape that you find amusing. We will practice the charm without wands first. After me. Ridiculous!" "Ridiculous!" said the class together. "Good," said Lupin. "Very good. But that was the easy part, I'm afraid. You see, the word alone is not enough, and this is where you come in, Neville." The wardrobe shook again, though not as much as Neville, who walked forward as though he was heading for the gallows. "Right, Neville," said Professor Longbottom. "First things first, what would you say is the thing that frightens you most in the world?" Neville's lips moved, but no noise came out. "Didn't catch that, Neville, sorry," said Professor Lupin cheerfully. Neville looked around rather wildly, as though begging someone to help him, then said, in barely more than a whisper, "Professor Snape." Nearly everyone laughed. Even Neville grinned apologetically. Professor Lupin, however, looked thoughtful. "Professor Snape? Neville, I believe you live with your grandmother." Yeah," said Neville nervously, "but I don't want that boggart to turn into her either." No, you misunderstand me," said Lupin, now smiling. "I wonder, could you tell us what sort of clothes your grandmother usually wears?" Neville looked startled, but said, "Well, always the same hat, a tall one with a stuffed vulture on top, and a long dress, green normally, and sometimes a fox fur scarf, and a handbag," Professor Lupin prompted. "A big red one," said Neville. "Right then," said Professor Lupin. "Can you picture those very clothes clearly, Neville? Can you see them in your mind's eye?" "Yeah," said Neville uncertainly, plainly wondering what was coming next. "When the boggart bursts out of this wardrobe, Neville, and sees you, it will assume the form of Professor Snape," said Lupin, "and you will raise your wand, like thus, and cry, 'Ridiculous!' and concentrate hard on your grandmother's clothes. If all goes well, Professor Boggart Snape will be forced into that vulture top hat, the green dress with a big red handbag." There was a great shout of laughter. The wardrobe wobbled more violently. "If Neville is successful, the boggart is likely to turn his attention to each of us in turn," said Professor Lupin. "I would like all of you to take a moment now to think of what scares you most, and prepare and imagine how you would force it to look comical." The room went quiet. Harry thought, what scared him most in the world? His first thought was Lord Voldemort. Voldemort returned to full strength. But before he'd even started to plan a possible counterattack on a boggart Voldemort, a horrible image came floating to his mind. A rotting, glistening hand slithering back beneath a dark cloak. A long, rattling breath from an unseen mouth. Then a cold so penetrating it felt like drowning. Harry shivered, then looked around, hoping no one had noticed. Many people had their eyes shut tight. Ron was muttering to himself, "Take off its legs!" Harry was sure knew what that was about. Ron's greatest fear was spiders. "Everybody ready?" said Professor Lupin. Harry felt a lurch of fear. He wasn't ready. How could he make a Dementor less frightening? But he didn't know what to ask him. He didn't want to ask for more time. Everyone was nodding and rolling up their sleeves. "Neville, we're going to back away now," said Professor Lupin. "Let you have a clear marked field, all right? I'll call the next person forward. Everyone back now so Neville can get a clear shot." They all retreated, backing against the walls, leaving Neville alone beside the wardrobe. He looked pale and frightened, but he had pushed up his sleeves of his robes and was holding his wand ready. "On a count of 3, Neville," said Professor Lupin, who was pointing his own wand at the handle of the wardrobe. 1, 2, 3, now! A jet of sparks shot from the end of Lupin's wand and hit the doorknob. The wardrobe burst open. Hook-nosed and menacing, Professor Snape stepped out, and his eyes flashing at Neville. Neville backed away, his wand mouthing wordlessly. Snape was bearing down upon him, reaching inside his robes. "Ridiculous!" squeaked Neville. There was a noise like a whip crack. Snape stumbled. He was wearing a long, lace-trimmed dress and a towering hat topped with a moth-eaten vulture, and swinging a huge crimson handbag from his hands. There was a roar of laughter. The boggart paused, confused, and Professor Lupin shouted, "Parvati, forward!" Parvati walked forward, her face set. Snape rounded on her. There was another crack, and where he stood was a blood-stained, bandaged mummy. Its sightless face was turned to Parvati, and it began to walk slowly towards her, dragging its feet, its stiff arms rising. "Ridiculous!" cried Parvati. A bandage unveiled at the mummy's feet. It became entangled, fell on its face, and its head rolled forward. "Seamus!" roared Professor Lupin. Seamus darted past Parvati. Crack! Where the mummy had been was a woman with floor-length hair and a skeletal green-tinged face. A banshee. She opened her mouth wide, and an unearthly sound started filling the room. A long, wailing shriek, which made the hair on Harry's head stand on end. "Ridiculous!" shouted Seamus. The banshee made a rasping noise and clutched her throat. Her voice was gone. Crack! The banshee turned into a rat, which chased its tail in a circle. Then, crack! Became a rattlesnake, which slithered and writhed before, crack! Becoming a single bloody eyeball. "It's confused!" shouted Lupin. "We're getting there, Dean!" Dean hurried forward. Crack! The eyeball became a severed hand, which flipped over and began to creep along the floor like a crab. "Ridiculous!" yelled Dean. There was another snap, and the hand was trapped in a mousetrap. "Excellent! Ron, you're next!" Ron leapt forward. Crack! Quite a few people screamed. A giant spider, 6 feet tall and covered in hair, was advancing on Ron, clicking its pincers menacingly. For a moment, Harry thought Ron had frozen. Then, "Ridiculous!" bellowed Ron, and the spider's legs vanished. It rolled over and over. Lavender Brown squealed and ran out of its way, and it came to a halt at Harry's feet. He raised his wand ready, but... "Here!" shouted Professor Lupin suddenly, hurrying forward. Crack! The legless spider had vanished. For a second, everyone looked wildly to see what it was. Then they saw a silvery white orb hanging in front of Lupin, who was ridiculous, almost lazily. Crack! "Forward, Neville, and finish him off," said Lupin, as the boggart landed on the floor as a cockroach. Crack! Snape was back. This time Neville charged forward, looking determined. "Ridiculous!" he shouted, and they had a split-second view of Snape in his lacy dress before Neville let out a great "ha!" of laughter, and the boggart exploded, burst into 1,000 tiny wisps of smoke, and was gone. "Excellent!" cried Professor Lupin as the class broke into applause. "Excellent, Neville. Well done, everyone. Let me see. 5 points to Gryffindor for every person to tackle a boggart. 10 for Neville since he did it twice, and 5 to Hermione and Harry." "But I didn't do anything," said Harry. "You and Hermione answered my questions correctly at the start of the class, Harry," Lupin said lightly. "Very well. Everyone, an excellent lesson. Homework, kindly read the chapter on boggarts and summarize it for me, to be handed in on Monday. That will be all." Talking excitedly, the class left the staff room. Harry, however, wasn't feeling cheerful. Professor Lupin had deliberately stopped him from tackling the boggart. What? Was it because he'd seen Harry collapse on the train and thought he wasn't up to much? Had he thought Harry would pass out again? But no one else seemed to notice anything. Did you see me take that banshee? Shouted Seamus. And the hand, said Dean, waving his hand around. And the Snape in the hat. And my mummy. I wonder why Professor Lupin frightened of crystal balls, said Lavender thoughtfully. That was the best defense against the dark arts lesson we've ever had, wasn't it? Said Ron excitedly as they made their way back to the classroom to get their bags. He seems to be a very good teacher, said Hermione approvingly, but I wish I could have had a turn with the boggart. What would have been for you? Said Ron, sniggering. A piece of homework that only got a 9 out of 10? What do you think, guys? Chapter is done. Thank you for the follow earlier, by the way, Sung. Appreciate you, mate. Yeah, it was a short chapter. I told you, it was a very short chapter tonight. Very short chapter. Short chapter, but a good one. Short but good. Let's see. Hey, thank you for the bits, Benji. I appreciate you, mate. Thank you so much. I actually need to go. I want to extract that yeah buddy I did earlier. And turn that into a freaking thing, 'cause I think that'd be cool. Thank you, Benji. I really appreciate it. Yeah, buddy. Have a nice night, Benji. Thank you for the bit. Appreciate you, mate. Zelda. Here we are, Steph. Just now that you're here, now that I know you're here. Next stream, so the Wednesday stream, I'm gonna wait to play Zelda until you arrive. Yup. By the way, who they were? Can I see who they were? Anyway, guys, I hope you all had a great stream. I'm gonna leave it short. Actually, let me check. I need to check how long it's gonna take me to get to work tomorrow. I need to check how long it's gonna take me to work tomorrow. Give me a sec. I have to drive all the way to freaking New South Wales tomorrow. I'm gonna do it once. I'm gonna do it once, and if it takes too long to get to work, I'm not driving there again. It's a 40-minute drive. Oh, down in Tweed Heads. Nah, I'm not driving. I'm gonna drive. I'm gonna try it once. Is Karma in the chat? Hi, Karma. It was. No, it's Karma down in New South Wales, I assume. What, really? Oh, it's nighttime. Yeah, right. But it's a 40-minute drive right now at 9:30 p.m. I can't imagine it's going to be any better tomorrow morning when I'm going to work. So I'm probably going to go do it once and then just be like, nah, I'm done. And not do it again.
Good night.
Good night. But yeah, buddy.
Good night, handsome.
Good night, Dad.
Love you.
Love you.
Tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a but the thing is, the only issue is it's a 40-minute drive at like 9, nearly 10 p.m. at night. I can't imagine how long it's gonna be a miserable drive tomorrow. It's probably gonna take me like an hour to get there tomorrow. I can't be bothered. But actually, I would do it. I'd be keen if it was a long shift, but it's only a 3-hour session with this client. Unfortunately, I have work. Well, normally my work's like 10 minutes. Normally my work's like 10 minutes, guys. So it's not too bad. Like today, work took about 20 minutes because there was like the traffic. But tomorrow it's 40 minutes without traffic. Absolutely ridiculous. Alright, see what it did. Anyway, guys, I am going to end the live stream here. I need to go to bed because Alexa, turn on my 6:30 a.m. alarm.
Alarm set for 6:30 a.m.
I'm not 100% sure how well I'm going to go getting up tomorrow. Like, getting this... I don't know how long it's going to take me to... I don't know how long it's going to take me to get there, but we shall see. Anyway, I'm going to end the live in 3, 2, 1. Bye-bye.